recording. I just wanted to let everybody know that we are recording this, and as soon as I can get the WebEx editor to work for me and convert the recordings to something that is not proprietary to WebEx, I will be posting these and letting people know where they are so that they can look at them. But it wasn't very helpful. I think I've got an idea what to do next, but got kind of snowed in by a couple of things. So anyways, I don't think we have anybody new on the call. And it's not really a whole lot of adjustments to the agenda, it just kind of fleshed it out a little bit more. So, Kathy, are you ready to show and tell?
Oh, I am if we think that it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, if nothing else, it'll be practice for when we get around to being able to show the National VA PALS folks.
Okay.
So I believe you can, yeah, there should be like a share someplace, maybe in your sidebar. Because this one, I don't think, yeah, you kind of choose to share for yourself.
No, that's not it.
It's oh, let's see.
Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Share my screen. There it is.
There we are.
Share.
Okay, there we go.
Can everybody see my screen now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, awesome. So what we had decided that I would demonstrate is using FileMan to enter a patient into the background form. So that is what we are going to try to do. I'm just going to put in a test patient. So it always starts with a study ID, and our mock study IDs for this are going to start with 2 X's. And it says, do you want to add this person? And I'm going to say yes. So since this is a test patient, I'm just going to give them a birth date of January 1st. That makes it easy to do the math, and that means that this patient is going to be 63 years old. And so far, all the test patients that I've created have the last name of test patient. This is going to be Betty, test patient. For intake, we're going to put today. Betty is a retired office manager. I'll just say retired then. Retired. Occupation code, we've got, this came from the original LCAP form. These codes, I personally find them not extremely relevant to most jobs that people have, but I was able to make one up. So since she's an office manager, she was administrative personnel. She's female. I'm going to use inches for height, which is very not scientific and not medical, but I didn't want to do the math. So, and BMI, I don't really know how to calculate a BMI, and hopefully at some point we will have the code in this field to make it a computed field, and it won't have to be entered by hand. But in the meantime, I'm just going to leave it blank. Ethnicity is actually to see whether the person is Hispanic or Latino. And we're going to say no. And race, they gave us a really extensive help text for race, so that's all in here. So she is black. And if I chose other, I have to specify. This is the sort of thing that on George's web form we can gray out things that aren't going to be applicable. But in just entering it into FileMan, it's going to ask me everything, unfortunately. Level of education, there. I'm going to go ahead and say military because this is going to be for a VA project, and pretty much everybody is going to be a military person. This is to see whether a lung screening scan was ordered for the patient, and I'm going to say no. And again, if I say no, then all of these subsequent fields are optional and in fact shouldn't be filled out at all. So again, in George's form, if you say no to scan ordered, these are all grayed out. But in just entering it into FileMan, I need to just manually skip them. And then this is another one. If I say that there isn't a family history of lung cancer, these ought to be grayed out. But since I'm just in FileMan, it's just going to ask me. And we'll say,
And as I understand it, this is based as closely as we can get to LCAP's background form. So it's some things that we may have done differently. That is for later. This is just LCAP's.
yeah, this is trying to mimic to the extent that we can what the form as it already existed. There were some things that I was really dying to change, but I didn't. So this is asking about history of whether or not the person has had at least 100 cigarettes in their lifetime. In Betty's case, I'm going to say she's not actually a smoker, but she came up in the bad old days when you got exposed to everybody else's smoke. So she has significant secondhand exposure. So again, all of this stuff about smoking would be grayed out when George finishes his form, so that we don't have to go through all of this, how much did you smoke and when did you smoke and when did you quit stuff, because our girl Betty never smoked. But she was exposed to secondhand smoke in the workplace. And this is, the age range is just a free text. And this is a multiple. So we're going to start with our very first job.
This is Rick. A question on PAC years. I thought there was just a request to put in the number of PAC years. Are we trying to calculate out the PAC years?
We are trying to mimic the form, and the form.
Yeah, the form is
that field. I believe was a field that's asked about what the number of PAC years that the ordering provider put in when they ordered the CT scan. It's later in the form when you get down to where we get down to our PAC years questions.
But that's one that I already skipped.
Yeah.
So sorry. Let me answer, and then you guys can help. Okay. So yeah, there are two places where the form asks about PAC years. The first one is up here it's one of those that where you, after you answer yes on the CT lung scan ordered, then you fill in all the stuff about the information that the practitioner, the person, the physician who ordered the CT scan, all of that information that person provided. And one of those questions is the reported PAC years for the ordering practitioner. So when the physician said, you know, give this person a lung CT, one of the pieces of information that they may have passed along is the PAC years. So you can put that in that. And then you get down here and you ask about where they use tobacco, and how many days, you know, how many cigarettes per day, how many days per week, for how many years. And then there's a place for calculating total PAC years on the form, and then there's a blank where the nurse navigator can put in the total PAC years on the form. In the fileman form, I have skipped over the total PAC years because I'm saying that, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I noticed that. I was just curious. So it looks like it's in two places. One of them is expanded out. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one of them is what did the person's doctor say, and then the other one is what number did we get when we interviewed the patient. And hopefully those two numbers will be the same, but I think that we all know, given human nature, they might not be the same. So,
well, often not.
So, but for this example, I'm saying that this particular patient never smoked, so we're not going to calculate total PAC years for her.
And if I remember correctly, we don't have a calculation for PAC years in here because the LCAP form does not. It is something that the nurse navigator calculates manually and then puts in. I think that's something that we're hoping to add later. Does that sound right?
I think that we're going to have to, because from what I understand, it's pretty complicated because people smoke different amounts at different points in their life, and then they quit and they start up again, and they smoke less when they first start, and I think it can be a pretty complicated number.
Well, and I think there's an element of judgment that's used in doing it. So I'm not sure that there's even a arithmetic algorithm you can apply to this thing.
As much art as science.
Right, judgment. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in this multiple, then you put, you know, how many years it was, what they were doing, and whether smoking was allowed in the workplace. And once I fill out those three pieces of information, then I can put in another age range, so she had a couple of jobs where, you know, people were smoking around her, so we're going to put that in there. We'll leave it at that. And then some of these field names were, you know, they were based on questions on the form, and of course the field name has to be short enough.
To fit the parameters of file.
Yeah. And of course, this is, did the patient's mother smoke when the patient was under 7, but I'm kind of hoping that that is understood. It was sometimes a little bit difficult to get these questions in to short enough that it wouldn't wrap. So we're going to say that Betty's husband smoked for a while. And so we're going to say so if you live with if they live with someone who smokes, then you want to know how much did that person smoke. And then again, you know, was it just anywhere in the house, or was it restricted? And we'll say that that's it. Her husband quit after that, and then we have a bunch of questions about general health that I think I'm just going to skip. And so that's Betty in the background field. So if we pop back out, we can do an inquire, and I've got I need to decide how many zeros I put in. I can see. So, and then there are our test patients. That's my first one that I put in yesterday. That's Joe, test patient. And then here's Betty, test patient. And I believe I made up another one for George to put in later on his form. So that's kind of what I have.
Thank you, Kathy. Questions, anybody?
How long does it take? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that what this background form is going to be used for, as I understand in the study, is to see whether the person should be part of the study, should be getting the low-dose CT scans, whether their risk of cancer is high enough that they ought to be included in the study, or whether they don't have a high enough risk of cancer to warrant getting the scans regularly. Sorry, Rick, go ahead.
Well, on that topic, the current guidelines for reimbursement in the United States, which is outside of veteran scope, but is just PAC years and age. And I think I don't even think family history comes into it. But a lot of these questions, I think, help with the research later on. So, you know, second.
Yeah, that was one of the challenges that I had when I was trying to just kind of come up with test patients off the top of my head, is that we don't really have a good feel for what parameters we should be trying to stay within. So I just kind of did the best I could because we're just kind of messing around at this point. But at some point, it would be nice to have some, I guess, some more clinically useful test patients. But that's something that we can discuss offline and get further down the road, I guess.
Well, I'm speaking with Claudia this week about that. It's my job to get that from the LCAP group, so I'm working on it. The question I had originally was, how long do you think it takes to enter all the information in the background form?
I'm not sure. I think that once the nurse navigator knows what they're doing, it shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. But, you know, if you're sitting there interviewing the patient, it kind of depends on how quickly the patient can answer the questions.
No, I was more asking if you know all the answers, how long does it take?
Yeah, I would say 10, 15 minutes. Yeah. Probably faster on the web form because it's, you know, it's designed to be a little bit more user-friendly.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So were we going to do George next, or what was going to be next, Linda?
Well, I'd be happy to go next.
Okay.
Because what I have to show follows on with what you just did.
All right. So do I have to stop sharing my screen, or can you just grab it away from me?
Why don't you go ahead? Oh, I'm going to grab it.
Okay.
All right. Can you guys see me?
Yes.
All right. So let's see. Oh, so this is cheating here. 8001. So what we have here, I'm going to show you. The first thing I'm going to show is the form that Kathy entered yesterday, but with the results with the results taken out of the FileMan file and populated into the form. And so this is still an early version of this code so that not everything will get populated properly, I think. So we're just starting to test it, actually. But you'll recognize, you won't recognize these things because you didn't do it today. But these are the answers that were given yesterday in that patient are here.
I noticed at the top that it didn't have the last name and first name of Joe test patient filled in.
Right. The test patients are. I have to. We have code yet to do the the parsing of that and putting it in, because it's anyway. It's not done yet. So we can then look at the form that we just created, that Kathy just created, which I think was XX002. Is that what you did? I believe so.
Yeah. 0002.
And we'll just, it pulls it from FileMan, and we'll, how many?
3 zeros. I went and added another one because the other ones have 3.
Ah.
You got to watch me every minute, George.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's pretty tricky, Kathy. Okay, so here we've got retired administrative personnel, the female, wait, this is Betty. Oh, and here's the computation of the DMI for you. So that would get populated. That's done. Ken put us, has a JavaScript routine that runs that populates the BMI for us. Once you put in the height and weight, and maybe the sex. I don't know if it varies. I don't think so.
No, it doesn't vary by sex.
Okay, well there we are. And you said no to that. Let's see what else came in. You said no to these things. You said yes to this. Treated yes, and you gave us a 2004, but I noticed you didn't enter the highest value, and so it's not populated. It's ready to go. High cholesterol, yes. I don't think we answered. I don't know if you answered treated or not. So
I don't think she did. So that's the way it should be.
Yeah. So we're just at the point. This code is new. We're just at the point of needing to check to see what fields were entered, that all the fields that were entered actually come through. Now, I'm not sure on the form how, in fact, we're going to show where the jobs and all those questions where you entered in multiple age ranges and jobs. I don't see them on the form right now.
They would be farther down because they're the secondhand stuff.
Yeah, this whole I don't see the secondhand section. That's what I don't see.
Ah, okay.
So we still have the secondhand section to do. So anyway, so that's some progress. We've got we're actually technically what this is doing is that when we prepare to display the form, the first thing we do is to go over and see if there's already a FileMan record created for this patient, for this form. And if there was, then we read the values from FileMan and use those to pre-populate the page. And then the next step is to after the page is filled out on the form, then if the fields are valid, then to populate FileMan. And I have that a test version of that working on a different server. So here we go. So now we've switched over to my development server, and we're going to we're going to, you know, change the occupation to actuary. And now this is different than what you've seen before. Is after you've entered entered a patient, what it did is it first checked. It first did a validity check on all the fields that you've entered, and then if all the fields were valid, it used a mapping file and figured out how to file most of the fields that you've entered into FileMan. And then this, what we're giving you here, is actually from FileMan. This is the FileMan record that was just created when I pressed, you know, for this patient. And you'll notice that actuary is in occupation. So we go back in and demonstrate that some more of these things work. Let's see, ethnicity, Hispanic. All right. And we can put in a we shouldn't have been able to do that. Input invalid. It should not have taken us to the FileMan display. It should have just redisplayed the screen with the input invalid here. And actually, it won't be input invalid here. It'll be an error up here. It'll say, you know, height. It'll say whatever FileMan says when you have an invalid height. But we can 66 inches, 8 pounds, calculate the BMI, and now we should be able to enter this. What just happened? So this is why this is on the development server and not on the other server, because I haven't released it yet.
We're helping you test it, George.
Yeah. So all right. So that didn't work right. We were able to change the text code. We were able to change some pull downs, but when we had when we encountered an error condition, we didn't work right. Well, that's kind of right. So let's see if we can change this. I think it might have actually filed the bad code into FileMan. So.
And those are, every time I've seen the form with the errors, those are the two that it's had at the top. So I'm wondering if it's just.
I haven't written any code to put the errors on the top. This is just
okay. Cool.
is just the. I'm working now on filing into FileMan. So that's basically what I had to show.
Okay, great.
We have some progress on.
I have a question.
Yes, Sam.
So when you guys save the height and weight and calculate the BMI, do you use the Vista Vitals package?
No.
Okay. Even the BMI calculation, you're not
There's
using?
We have the BMI uses a JavaScript JavaScript computation, so it's actually done. It's actually done immediately as soon as you enter you enter a height and you enter a weight.
All right. Just FYI,
and then you leave the field.
Because of multiple problems with the Vitals package, and I blame the Vitals package.
However,
the
the
way
decimal points that you get for BMI may differ, and that may lead some of your users to complain.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying. Now, this is one of the things we're going to have to consider after we get these forms done, so that they work standalone.
Yeah.
So they don't. We're then going to we're going to go through a process of integrating it with a Vista patient record, and at that time we're going to care about the vitals package and the and we're going to be, we'll do things like pull the date of birth from the patient's record.
Okay.
And the age and a lot of the sources of filling in this data will change in that phase. But the first step is we're going to get these forms to work so that you fill them in and they get saved to FileMan, and we're going to do all the forms and get them all to work. So the code being written for this is not specific. The code I'm writing for filing of, for presenting a form and for processing field validations and for filing to FileMan and reading from FileMan and redisplaying is not specific to this form, largely. And the idea is that it's not specific to the form. So the same code that we're debugging and fixing now would theoretically work on the next form and the next form and any of the other forms that we do.
Okay.
So there are obvious, and where there are exceptions, we have a form mapping file where we can put in input transforms and output transforms. We can put in special hooks. We have hooks, so we can put in mumps code that we can call a routine that's specific to a particular form and particular field by not by changing the general routine, which is what I'm writing now, but by entering that hook into the form mapping file, and so it'll get run only for that form that field on that form. So we're writing the generic works on any form code now, and then putting in the hooks so that if you have a field that needs special processing, you'll be able to add the code to do it. And it might be in fact that pulling data from the Vista patient will be treated as one of those input transform hooks, so that when the date of birth field is being displayed, being fetched, it will actually go out to the patient's record and pull it in at that time. And then maybe and then we'll have to ask this question clinically. Maybe the latest height and weight of record for the patient and that'll be from the vitals package, would be pulled in when these two are being displayed. Now that's an open question, whether we want these to actually be entered during the interview or whether the last the vitals on record should be used. Or we first do one, and if they change it, we make an entry into the vitals package. I don't know. Those are the considerations for after we for our second phase on these forms, where we try to integrate them with the patient record.
Any other questions about this so far? Hearing none. Alexis, are you ready to show us a little something?
I am.
Okay, cool.
Let's see, how do I?
I think up there is the share in the menu at the top.
Got it. Okay. So let's see. What I have been working on is primarily the sorry, I've been under the weather here for a day. The Docker images for running a copy of our development environment. And Joel Ivy and I forget who, maybe it was Anthony, expressed an interest in some of the details about how I've been doing that. I strongly suspect that they got the impression that I was doing something a little more sophisticated than I am. And so they may be disappointed. But the state of affairs is that we've got a Docker image that is a modified copy of Christopher Edwards' Docker image. Or perhaps I should say Sam's variant of Christopher Edwards' Docker image that includes a script to update the Docker container to the latest state of our development environment. And when I say that Joel Ivy and Anthony, if it was Anthony, might be disappointed, what I mean is that it's a rather blunt instrument. So the update script essentially wipes the Vista from the current container and updates it to mirror our development environment, Avicenna. But to the extent that folks might want to sort of see how that works, it has sort of three pieces. And those are that there is that I have modified Christopher Edwards' backup script to use mupip to back up the existing database on Avicenna, compress it, and send it to Amazon S3. And I have restructured the Osera home directory to contain almost everything within, in terms of routines and configuration and scripts, within one directory, and use GitHub to back up the latest state of that. And then I am using Docker Hub to host the actual images for the Docker containers that that community members can use to test this. So, do I have questions?
Yeah, so if you've got like your own routines in your image, does that mean that when you update the image, those will go away?
It does.
Okay.
Um,
That can be gotten around, I'm sure, by
yes.
the individual whose image it is. But
right, it certainly can.
What I do with that, because I use these containers for development. That's all all my development is done using these containers. And every time I make a modification to code on those containers, then from inside the container I do a git push. I have a couple different repositories. I have one private one where I have the kind of the current working version, and then I have the VA PALS one, which gets published to Avicenna. So the other thing I've done is I've also done an SFTP from my desktop into the container, and then did a get on the routines that have changed, and pull them onto the laptop and get them out of the basically get a copy of them out of the container. And I make sure I do that before I do an update, because that way my code doesn't get overwritten. And then, of course, when I do an update, if I have things that aren't part of the, that I'm working on that aren't part of the image, then I have to put them back. So I can either do a git pull on a private repository to pull them in and then add them to Vista, or I do a SFTP from my desktop into the container and then put them there. So those are the steps I have to go through to use the container for development. If you develop your own code, if you make changes to your FileMan files, then you have to do, and you want to keep those changes, between updates, and they're not part of the official release. Then you have to do make a kids file of them, and then SFTP that off the container, and then reapply it later. So basically, I don't depend on any of the changes I make to the FileMan files, like test patients and things like that, on my development system. I use the ones that Kathy made, or on the Avicenna as test data. And then if I create new test records on my development system, I know they're just temporary and they're going to go away.
So something that I can certainly change is so the lib directory of the for the Osera user is something that is not wiped when one runs the update script, and it would certainly be possible to have the update script apply after the update any changes that existed in this directory to the routines directory. So I think it's entirely possible to make this a little bit more tester friendly, in the sense that you could update your Docker container to reflect the latest state of our development environment, and then apply changes that you're using to the routines that your instance is using.
The intent of the Docker image is just to have a development environment. It's not to have the latest commits to the master branch, right?
So we have to clarify which master branch you're talking about. Is this Dominic, or is that you? Sorry.
No, this is Peter.
Oh, Peter. Okay. Sorry, we're speaking for the first time. So the point is to, the point of things where they stand is to run the update script and have your Docker container mirror our development environment.
Okay.
I feel like I failed to answer your question.
No, I got it. I got that. Yeah,
I think there's going to be two repositories of code. One which we have internally, which is still, that may or may not work. And one Git repository at Osera, which you made Peter. You made us a Git repository, right?
Right.
And we're planning to put publish code when we release this. We'll publish the working code that we have into that repository. And correct me if I'm wrong, Alexis, but when we release the Docker image, it will basically pull from the Osera repository for the code.
Right.
Right. So in terms of repositories, there are three three pieces of this. So presently, I am using Amazon S3 to store compressed copies of the database. And I am using, for the moment, a private copy of, as much as possible, the routines and scripts that are part of the latest state of our development environment, Avicenna. And I'm using Docker Hub for the actual Docker images. And so I think we're going to want to move as many of these three pieces as possible to Osera namespaced resources. But for the moment, this is where these three things live. George, I don't know. I think maybe I didn't answer your question.
No, you said it perfectly. The private repository you're talking about, that you're keeping, that I don't have access to, nobody has access to right now. That seems like it has the contents that we will put into the Osera GitHub account.
Right.
For the public open source image, right?
Right. So the image, oh gosh. So
in the other two, I don't think Osera has a Docker Hub account yet.
We do.
No. Oh, you do?
They do.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay. So
I can supply you with the account information if you need to push one to Osera.
Okay. So if I may, gosh, where am I going with this? So we would be, so I think we would love to have you host this. I need to get encryption of access and verify codes working, which I was supposed to be doing yesterday, except that I've been sick. And I might be able to enlist your help, in which I include Sam and you, in getting that going. And I think at that point, we can make these Docker images public. Right now, they're private because, aside from the fact that they're a work in progress, they include access and verify codes that we have set up for our individual users, and in anticipation of the point at which this might include actual patient data, I've wanted to keep that not public.
Yes. All right. Yeah, no, well, I will supply you with that information once you're ready to put it on the Osera.
Okay. And this is, I'm sorry, and this is...
This is Peter, yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. I meant, are we talking now about a GitHub account or a Docker Hub account?
Both.
Oh, great. I should add, it's a small detail, it's sort of an aside. One of the things that I did is Christopher Edwards. So I started, in case you don't know or missed this previously, I started with Christopher Edwards' Docker image, and specifically one that Sam had probably tweaked to get Panorama running.
I actually did not do that. Christopher's the one who did that.
Okay, great. Okay. And so one of the small things that I did is ZSY wasn't working because the package LSOF was missing. So,
oh, yeah.
So it's not my intent to somehow sidestep or replace what Christopher Edwards has done. I've just sort of, out of necessity, been modifying it. So
I mean, the other thing we could do is that those feature that capability that's really needed. We could add that to Christopher stuff, because we basically use that as our baseline too for Sarah. So it makes sense to if those capabilities should be included in the Christopher's creation of that Docker by including the Docker file. We should add it to that. And this way, you don't have to do it separately, because it's kind of infrastructure thing that it's nice to have.
So the twist here, I suppose, is that the installation of LSOF is an easy step to add on to Christopher Edwards' image. In order to make the update script work, I've actually had to modify the image so heavily that I'm not sure how to consolidate it with Christopher Edwards.
Okay.
There's another major difference. We've Alexis has reorganized the directory structure in the container also. So
yeah. Okay.
I think there are things certainly that you know, bugs or, you know, little infrastructure additions like Alexis mentioned, that could be pushed upstream into the OSIRA main image. But there's probably still going to be a need for a VA PALS image that'll be different.
Definitely understand that. If it's very, very specific to VA PAL, it makes sense to have a separate image.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Well said, George.
Okay. Well, it's 11 o'clock, so we should probably wrap things up.
Yeah, I got to go. I have another call. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for coming, Peter.
So if we can continue this conversation maybe next week, or in the interim, you guys can kind of get together, so to speak, and talk about it if needed.
I think we made a lot of progress. It's good. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think we will skip the rest of the agenda, except for to say that we are planning on having a call next week. And everybody have a great day. Make sure we're back down to just us again. It looks like pretty much so. Make sure to Skype if you're having issues or if you have questions, and we will do our best to figure it out. Have a good day, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.